evening. So this is Solve Climate by 2030 Florida. This is our power dialogue, so we can all come together and put our minds together as one and our actions to solve climate, hopefully by 2030, maybe sooner, right? If we really put our minds together. And we have a lot of great co-hosts and sponsors for tonight, including the CLEO Institute, a wonderful partner of ours, and University of South Florida as well. And we've got the Florida FPIRG students joining us tonight and the SDG Action Alliance. And we are definitely focusing on the UN Sustainable Development Goals tonight with number 13, climate action. So I am at USF, I'm the Director of Sustainable Tourism, and I'm also the director of our new SDG Action Alliance. We're taking all 17 SDGs and leveraging them for action and sustainability throughout our communities in Florida and beyond. So I'd love to hear from people some more if you're interested in supporting our mission. And I'd like to start this evening with a land acknowledgement. And this was developed by the Department of Anthropology at USF. And we're very grateful for their work with the Seminole Tribe of Florida in developing this, so we can always remember on whose land we're on, who came before us, and who is still here now, acting as stewards of our land and trying to promote sustainability across our regions. And so you can take a look at the statement here, but we definitely want to acknowledge the Seminole, Miccosukee, Muskegee, and Choctaw people, and all the other individuals from Native groups that reside in our state. And we recognize the continuing impacts of colonization on Indigenous people. And at the University of South Florida, we support Indigenous sovereignty. And we will continue to work with our Native partners throughout the state. And I include the link at the bottom if you would like to have access to that. We're also working with our tourism communities across the state to get land acknowledgements in their lobbies. So when visitors come to our state, they'll know where they're coming. Some housekeeping rules for tonight. For the participants, your video and audio are muted, but as you've been doing, please introduce yourselves in the chat and put your questions for the speakers and any specific speaker you have a question for in the Q&A so we can curate that at the end and have some more interaction. Here's our schedule for tonight in case you're wondering what the order is and who's coming up next. We will have several videos. We'll have the 5-minute introduction to the global Solve Climate 2030 event. And we'll also have a special video prepared by Mayor Levine, Cava. So we're very excited about that. And you can see the rest of our speakers from the Seminole Tribe of Florida, from the CLEO Institute, and from Florida FPIRG students. So we're very excited, and we will end at 7:30 tonight. So what we're really here for is to look at what we can do on a personal level, on a local level, on a state level, and on a national level to solve climate by 2030. But what we want from you tonight is we want 3 big solutions for the state of Florida, and then we want 3 actions that you will personally take to move this agenda forward. So please post ideas in the chat, and I'm going to be collecting all those after our webinar is over and sending them off to our main organizers for Solve Climate 2030. So we want to hear from you. So make that chat light up tonight. And this is a huge endeavor. This is the 2nd year that we've done Solve Climate 2030. Last year, we had all 50 states, including a number of different countries and territories participating. And this evening and over the next few days, we have all 50 states, all of our territories, and 50 universities from around the globe, all hosting webinars, all talking about Solve Climate 2030. So that's how we're bringing our mind and our energies together as one for this. So now I'd like to let you know a little bit about this project and what it's all about. So I'm going to play the 5-minute video from our main organizers. Little glitchy there. We're going to keep that going.
Welcome to the Solve Climate Global Dialogues. You're participating in one of 125 events held across the planet, including in almost all 50 U.S. states, part of a global project called Solve Climate by 2030. My name is Eben Goodstein, and I'm an economist and director of the Graduate Programs in Sustainability at Bard College in New York, the lead organizer for Solve Climate. This last year has been difficult for everyone. As the world looks forward to recovery from COVID, we are focusing tonight on the most important question facing humanity. What can we do in this year in our regions to help solve climate change while supporting struggling communities that have faced widespread loss of life, economic disaster, and joblessness? Worldwide, from Australia to Kyrgyzstan, from Colombia to Malaysia, and from South Carolina to South Africa, Solve Climate audiences are hearing from local experts and young leaders about concrete steps that can really help nations solve climate change while creating much-needed jobs and incomes for everybody. The year 2020 was one of the 2 hottest years in human history, bringing with it massive forest and grassland fires, record-breaking storms and hurricanes, and relentless rising seas. Solving climate is the challenge which the human species must now face. There's hope for the future. Solutions have continued to advance. This year, China committed to building a carbon-neutral economy, while the U.S. rejoined the Paris Agreement. Solar, wind, and battery prices continue to fall, while major car companies have been rushing to electrify the global fleet. Worldwide, movements for Black Lives Matter and Me Too are leading in bringing much delayed and urgently needed justice to the world. Time is short. We have until 2030, 10 years to solve climate. We can get a lot done in this decade. We have the solutions, but only if we focus the world on climate solutions and justice, and then do the work we have to do in our own cities and regions. For students listening, you are the leaders. Without you, the future we envision will not come. I'm asking tonight for your help. We're going to discover powerful ideas for climate solutions and climate justice and how you can be a part of the solution. But this message must reach beyond those of us who are listening right now. Would you ask all your teachers this week in every subject to make climate a class? The teacher can assign tonight's webinars homework for the students and then afterwards have a one-class period discussion. And we mean every subject, from art to engineering, psychology to business, dance to chemistry. Teachers don't need to be a climate expert to lead a discussion about climate change. The Solve Climate project has easy-to-use teacher's guides in nearly every subject and in 3 languages to help teachers make climate relevant to their class. It only takes courage. Don't take no for an answer. Ask them, why not? This is your future. You'll be surprised how many teachers will say yes and thank you. Imagine you, thousands of leaders like you around the world asking their teachers once every school term to make climate a class. That means every term going forward, hundreds of thousands, millions of students worldwide in their classes talking about climate solutions. COVID has shown how fragile our global economy and society are to extreme events. It's also shown that vulnerable people are facing the hardest, most damaging impacts. This is also true with climate change. Science has made it clear that unchecked, global warming will mean an unending onslaught of extreme events, causing untold suffering for humanity and all creatures, species driven to extinction, a planet of environmental refugees. And yet, in many ways, this is the most exciting time to ever be alive as a human. We have the tools and networks and technologies to rewire the world with clean energy, reimagine the global food system, reinvent transportation, and regenerate forests and grasslands, and be well on our way to solving climate by 2030. Tonight, we will learn how to do this in our own cities, our own towns, our own regions. Thank you for the work you will do to promote climate solutions and a just world.
Okay, so some words from our main organizer, Eben. And now we're going to move on in our program and hear from our amazing and impactful partners and co-hosts for tonight, the CLEO Institute. So I'm going to turn it over now to Yoka.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen, and thank you for the Patel College for the invitation. And we're excited to be here for a second year to find solutions on how to solve climate by 2030. My name is Chio Carditi Rocha, and I'm the Executive Director of the CLEO Institute. For those of you who may not know who the CLEO Institute is, the CLEO Institute is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, educational 501c3 organization that has been in the state of Florida for the last 12 years, building climate literacy, advocacy, and engagement. We work with the most recognizable and reputable science organizations around the world. And we work with communities at large throughout the state to empower them and educate them to demand a just, safe, healthy environment for all.
I want you to ask
I'm going to
yourselves
put this
those
video
tough
so you can
questions.
learn a little bit more about ourselves, our purpose, our mission, and our vision before we move on with our program.
I want you to ask yourselves those tough questions, the ones we avoid, how we want to live, what do we want for our children, what do we want for our planet?
Our atmosphere is so finely tuned for what we need, and we're treating it like a dumping ground, a sewer. The health impact of climate change is a global problem, and we see the results of that on a local level.
If we fail to act now, then we will leave behind a fundamentally degraded planet for our children and grandchildren, a planet that resembles the futures that have been portrayed in dystopian Hollywood films, unprecedented inundation of our coastlines, droughts, floods, heat waves, superstorms. That's the future that we will see if we fail to act on climate.
The CLEO Institute was founded in 2010 with the drive to educate and empower South Floridians to act on climate. Founded by Caroline Lewis, a science teacher by training, her vocation led her to understand what was causing people's apathy towards the glooming climate crisis: knowledge.
We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction.
Today, the CLEO Institute is the #1 nonprofit organization for climate education, engagement, and advocacy. Through programs like the CLEO Speakers Network, CLEO trains people to become climate speakers by breaking down the science, impacts, and solutions. CLEO's educational efforts are backed by a world-class expert advisory council of scientists, environmentalists, teachers, and government officials. While the world is already feeling the impacts of our changing climate, not everyone is feeling it the same way. CLEO is a leader in the climate justice movement, providing the resources and tools to the most vulnerable communities in South Florida that are on the front lines of the climate crisis.
I wanted to be an outreach for them.
Building communities' resilience through women is the cornerstone of our Empowering Resilient Women program. By teaming up with community members like the YWCA, CLEO is able to empower and educate women on how better to prepare for more extreme weather events like hurricanes while building community. CLEO works to remove barriers and build a wider coalition to fight climate change across faith-based communities, elected officials, and municipalities, schools, and cultural organizations. One of the most important voices that CLEO continues to amplify is that of our youth.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Their Gen CLEO program meets regularly with students across the region, training them to be climate ambassadors in their schools and communities.
Dear elected officials,
this is a crisis. Do your job. We'll be watching.
CLEO recently launched its Climate Resilient Schools initiative to bring their program into the classrooms while building a robust climate curriculum for Miami-Dade public schools.
I like the CLEO Institute because it takes the time to educate people about the importance of climate change and the things that we can do to improve our world.
You can have your voice heard too. Fund our climate action work today. The future of Florida is in your hands.
Yes, the future of Florida is in all our hands. As we probably all know, and because we're here today, we care about the climate crisis and we understand that the climate is changing in front of our eyes, and everything is connected to the climate crisis, everything we care about, because we all live under the same roof called an atmosphere. Extreme weather events, superstorm, rising heat, rising sea levels, increasing algal blooms. Those are all the very evident alarm signals that our planet is sending us of a changing climate. Climate change, everybody knows, most of us here today at least know that it's caused by human action, but it's also caused by human inaction. And so today we're going to be talking about actionable items, finding solutions, way that we can reverse greenhouse gas emission rising and try to solve the climate crisis. There are plenty of solutions. What we're lacking is right now is political will. And we are seeing that political will at the federal level now, and we're looking for additional engagement at the local and state level. So that's why we're super excited to be participating in this event together with the Patel College of Sustainability. So I want you to leave today with one main takeaway, and that is that you have superpowers because your voice and your vote matters. So I encourage all of you to get engaged civically and take a picture of this slide to make sure that you are contacting your local elected officials and your state officials as well, and making sure that your voice are being heard and telling them why this is such an important issue, and for them to listen to us. But because when we speak in one voice, politicians listen. So it's important for all of us to understand that we, the people, have true power. And so I want to make sure, encourage you that as we go along in our event today, you try to learn, try to get engaged. And many of you are probably thinking about, where do we start? And not everybody is at the same level. So if you're asking yourself, what can I do? It starts with a conversation. So I want to encourage everybody today to go home tonight and to speak about what you learned today here, and what, some of the new initiatives that you may have learned about, or some of the storytellings that you're going to hear about today, because it really starts with a conversation. The reality is that the majority of adults already think global warming is happening. If you can see by this map here today, 72% of adults here in the US think our climate is changing and the global warming is happening. But the reality also is that the majority of those adults who know the global warming is happening, at least they're not talking about it. They're not discussing this issue. So if there's something that you can do today for the climate, is to start a conversation. So I just want to leave you with that main takeaway before we move on with our programming. So I encourage you to continue growing, to continue to educate yourself and learn more. Please follow us at the CLEO Institute. We, again, our educational programs are science-based, and we have different levels of programming. You can become a CLEO certified climate speakers, where you can be really doing presentations to your own networks about the science, the solutions, and obviously the urgency of the climate crisis. And we have great programming, like our podcast, House on Fire, which you'll get to learn about rather quickly, because we have our co-host here today joining us. But before we start, I'd like to welcome our Miami-Dade County Mayor, Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who has prepared a special message for all of us here today.
Greetings, everyone. I'm honored to join you for today's webinar, To Solve Climate by 2030. More than 100 cities and schools across the world are joining us right now in these global dialogues. Each of these conversations is engaging up to 1,000 young people and teachers, so you are amplifying your voices. This is the incredible exponential power you have, and I applaud your efforts. Over the past couple of years, JP and Gabby have led CLEO rallies to convince local officials to declare climate emergencies. They are also the voices behind the powerful new podcast, House on Fire, so they are a great team to keep on your radar. Today's worldwide conversations to solve climate by 2030 are all about making firm commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions, build back better so that everyone has good paying sustainable jobs, and to make sure that there is social justice for all with a much clearer focus on inclusion. When I took office on November 17th, we started setting firm timelines and objectives for each of our county departments to track our climate progress. We established aggressive targets for the first 100 days and the first year of my administration, along with long-term projects for the county's next decade. In my administration's first 100 days, we completed 46 climate actions, and we identified 56 more to be achieved by 2022. And on Earth Day, April 22nd, Miami-Dade County will be releasing a full climate action strategy outlining all this work and our target dates. In the meantime, here are a few of those first achievements from our first 100 days. We got 6 major cruise lines to commit to shore power, so they will soon be plugging in instead of belching out pollution when they dock at Port Miami. And then we're bringing energy stability to affordable housing for seniors. We announced that the county will be installing solar panels at Gibson Plaza. This is just one of many important clean energy retrofits planned for our county's affordable housing stock, which amounts to well over 10,000 units. And we launched our first Building Efficiency 305 Challenge. This is a friendly competition where the Office of Resilience in our county helps building managers around the county dramatically cut operation costs while they also reduce energy and water consumption. Clean energy is already the largest employer in Florida's energy sector, and it needs more skilled workers. Transitioning to clean energy is projected to eliminate 2.3 million metric tons of carbon emissions, to save home and building owners $411 million, and create more than 2,500 jobs over the next 30 years. To accomplish this and other vital climate work, we are not only drawing on the talents and drive of government employees, but also the creativity and dedication of our many community partners and all of our residents. I've created several new positions and offices within the mayor's office to ensure that we have diverse perspectives and input from everyone, including an Office of Equity and Inclusion, an Office of Community Engagement, and a Senior Advisor for Innovation and Performance. While our federal government is now finally stepping up to the plate to support climate action, we still do face multiple challenges at the state level. This just makes me all the more grateful that so many of you listening today are true agents of change. You have the skills and experience to help us deal with the many preemption bills now going through our state legislature. These bills would take away local options and stifle the entrepreneurial drive and ingenuity that we need to create new clean energy options. In closing, I want to thank you for inviting me to this important conversation, and I look forward to seeing how we will all work together to solve climate by 2030. Greetings, everyone. I'm honored to join you.
Indeed, there are so many great things happening at the local level in Miami-Dade County. We're looking forward to seeing the new unveiled plan on April 22nd by the mayor, but we are encouraged to already have seen some great efforts happening in her first 100 days. And while there is great work doing at the local level, there are some concerning things happening at the state level that you'll hear from later on today from another member of our team. I want to then get us started, and it is my great pleasure to start introducing our host for today, the co-host of the House on Fire podcast, JP and Gabby. So JP, obviously John Paul Mejia and everybody in his circles knows him as JP, is a Miami-based climate activist and educator who organizes both at the local and national level. We adore JP. He has been a catalyst and an arsonist in all of his circles, and we're excited to welcome him today. And Gabby, his co-host, it is actually a member of our team. Gabby is a college student studying environmental science. She's the program coordinator at the CLEO Institute, leading a lot of our work in our Resilient Schools programming. And also it's an organizer and a climate justice activist. So welcome, Gabby, and welcome, JP. It's exciting to have you today.
Thank you so much, Yoka, and thank you so much to everyone here.
Take it away.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Gabby, do you want to say something about yourself before we get started?
Sure. So hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting JP and I. I'm really happy to be with you all today. Again, my name is Gabby. I'm a student, I'm an educator, I'm an organizer. I do a lot of work at the CLEO Institute where I help bring climate change education to students in Florida of all different backgrounds and areas. And I also co-host CLEO's youth-led podcast, House on Fire, which you see on your screen right now with JP. And this podcast is all about impactful conversations with leaders in the climate movement. So today we actually dropped our newest episode with Dr. Michael E. Mann. He's an award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning, world-renowned climate scientist. And we talked all about climate disinformation and how the fossil fuel industry has basically, protected their profits for too long. And so I'm going to put it in the chat again, but you can feel free to listen to that new episode. It's up today. And yeah, I think with that said, JP, do you want to say anything else about yourself before we get started?
Sure. I mean, I think it was said really well by Yoka. I've never been so honorably called an arsonist before. I was really happy about that. But yeah, I am a local organizer. My roots are in Miami. I love fighting for the people and places I love every day. And besides my work at CLEO, which is similar to Gabby's, at least from the podcast side, I work with several organizations doing some national movement planning work and looking at the scopes and scales of what we can win at a federal level in the next 5 years. So I'm really excited to be here looking at everything from the personal to local to state to national level of what we can be doing. And I know we have a great round of speakers who will be blessing us with a lot of knowledge, which I'm super excited to get into. So yeah, let's jump straight into that section. We have two great speakers lined up for you today. So first we have Jill Horwitz, who served as the Climate Resiliency Officer for the Seminole Tribe, and we have Salome Garcia, who is someone who we work closely with, and she is the Policy and Campaigns Manager for the CLEO Institute. So Gabby, I don't think I did them enough justice with just those titles. Do you want to say a little more?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and introduce Jill more deeply, and we'll move on to Jill's part. So Jill Horwitz has served as the Seminole Tribe of Florida since 2020. As the Climate Resiliency Officer, Ms. Horowitz coordinates research on the immediate and long-term impacts of climate change, engages with the tribal community to inform planning and program development, and provides recommendations and best practices to leadership on how to protect the assets of the Seminole Tribe and build greater resilience for the entire community. Prior to serving the tribe, Jill was the Senior Environmental Program Coordinator in Broward County's Environmental Planning and Community Resilience Division. During her 10 years at Broward County, she won the National Planning Excellence Award for Environmental Planning by the American Planning Association, achieved the first 4-star community sustainability rating by a county government in the USA, and created and managed a peer exchange network of over 500 local sustainability professionals. So yeah, pretty great. I think I'm gonna pass it over to Jill now.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. Really exciting conversation, and obviously conversation that leads to action, right? So I encourage all of you to look at your strengths and look at how you can contribute. I have over 15 years helping, local governments and communities with climate planning. But, at first I was absolutely grassroots organizer with FPIRG, with National Parks Conservation Association, Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and others. So yes to grassroots organizing. And then got to work, like Gabrielle said, in local government, which is both soul crushing and really, really important to do, to understand how the gears of government works so that you can help to affect them better. So I encourage folks to kind of try to, straddle both sides of that. I'm going to give you a quick presentation on what I've been doing so far. I've only been with the Seminole Tribe for about 4 or 5 months, but really enjoying my new role, where I'm getting to learn a lot. Let's see, I'm going to share screen 2. Can everybody see that? Good, okay. So there's my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to me afterwards, it's just my name, Jill Horwitz at semtribe.com. The Seminole Tribe of Florida has reservations all over Florida. They are a federally recognized tribe, working to increase their sovereignty and independence. And this is a brand new position that they've created to really look at climate resiliency for immediate and long-term impacts. So why I'm so excited about joining the Seminole Tribe is that we've been talking about climate a lot. We're at this moment where we're really transitioning, hopefully, right, from the Industrial Revolution to a climate revolution. But I don't think we can get there unless we really are not only talking about decarbonization, but we're talking about decolonization as well. The two conversations have to happen at the same time if we're going to get there. This is a really cool website. I didn't embed it because I know that slows things down. So I encourage you on your own to explore this Invasion of America. It shows where the different tribes had homelands, and it kind of has like a time-lapse series of the invasion process. And that really shows, oh boy, internet connection is unstable. You guys just yell at me if you can't see something, if I go down. So that really comes to the point where, I know that there are a lot of climate impacts. I know how to build a climate action plan, but it's not a plan for me. It's a plan for the Seminole people. And so I'm asking them, how do you define resilience? What do you think a strong Seminole climate resilient future looks like? It's not for me to define with all of my biases and assumptions. No matter how much training I do in equity, I still have those. I want these people to define it for themselves and build that vision, and the program will go around that. So for me, it's not just about educating, it's about listening. And that's the biggest action I could probably take this year, is actual, true, deep listening. And that's something that I'm practicing now. Of course, resilience means bouncing back to, existing conditions, but do we really want to get back to existing conditions? Has the status quo served us in any way? No. And so I challenge all of us to redefine resilience, to not just bouncing back from shocks and stressors, but to really think about what that means for each of us. What do we need to change about our current systems, whether they be food or energy or relationships, to make sure that we actually have the future that we want? So when I ask tribal members how they define resilience, they're not just talking about decreased risk from vulnerability or energy mitigation. They're talking about kinship. That's the relationships with the earth and with each other. Reciprocity, economy, land, stewardship, holistic, all sorts of other aspects that we also, I think, could listen to. And, here in South Florida, I'm in South Florida, but we have reservations all across Florida. We have many impacts that we have to start worrying about that are affecting people today and are only going to get worse. Sea level rise, groundwater rise, changing rainfall patterns, severe weather and flooding, tidal flooding, saltwater intrusion, and ocean acidification. And there's more temperature extremes, more frequent and severe droughts, beach and also wetland erosion, habitat zone shift. Of course, there are a ton more, but I don't want to totally depress people. We're supposed to move on thinking of all these impacts. What I really need to do is to not just throw a whole lot of science on people. The science is important. The science is very important. But it's also, again, like I said, it's about listening. Native Americans have been on this land dealing with lots of different climates for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We need to listen to understand what to do when there are different kinds of extreme events. How does the earth respond? How does each area respond before we changed it? How do we get back to something where the earth knows how to deal with some of these, and we know how to anticipate how the earth will deal with it? That is listening to traditional ecological knowledge and combining that with the Western-based science to do really ground truthing, really understanding whether what we're predicting is happening, whether it correlates with people's experience, and what kind of future we want. So this year, we'll be building a climate action plan together. It's an ambitious timeline. We'll see if I can get it done, considering all the challenges that COVID brings us in getting together and working together. I like to work in person, and that's not really possible right now, but hopefully soon. So you'll see in the beginning of the plan, it's about really listening to tribal members, meeting with all the different departments. In the next phase, we're going to have different workshops, bringing experts in, and also finding experts from within the community to talk about what are the goals that the tribe wants to set. And then, putting that to paper, writing some goals, objectives, and actions to get us to those goals that we can do both with staff and with the community. It's a shared plan. It falls on everyone because this is everyone's problem and everyone can bring their talents to the table. And then after, hopefully we can adopt the plan, we'll have a 5-year implementation tracking tool and get started. So I can't wait to get started. As I come into this role, I find that there's already a lot going on. I'm going to skip forward and just show you, we already have, well, let me just back up 1 second. Climate change has to go into everything. So here's where I put my planner hat back on and think about the role that local government plays. We have to look at climate resiliency in literally everything. It's transportation, it's health, it's economy, it's everything, right? So I need to get all departments thinking, just like you can get all classes to start thinking about climate change. That means I'll be weaving climate resilience strategies into comprehensive plans, housing design and locations, capital investments, wildlife conservation plans, water supply and water storage planning efforts, and economic development. And like I said, even though I've just begun, there's already a lot of initiatives underway. We actually have 2 vulnerability assessments kicking off that are grant funded. We have one of our Hollywood reservation, which is the biggest reservation. And that's where the Hard Rock is, right? The hotel and the casino and the headquarters. We also have a tribe-wide cultural resource vulnerability assessment, which is very interesting. We have stormwater master planning on 4 of the reservations, which is really important. A rural reservation resiliency grant, which is just a long way of saying we're starting to put solar on government buildings, which is good. And we're talking about transitioning to fleet to electric vehicles. And my favorite program that we're kicking off is this Kissimmee Billy Slew program. And I'm sorry that Marty wasn't able to be here with us tonight because he's the leader of this program and a tribal member and just absolutely a pleasure to listen to. But I'll just share a couple pictures that I have. This is an outdoor experiential education program where he is getting kids outdoors to learn about history, their culture, and the environment, because kids are just on the computer and on video games and on their phones way too much, that we can all relate to that. And we really need to listen to nature and be in nature to learn from her. And so he is doing such amazing healing work on the reservation by getting kids back out to know the land that they are from and to learn from each other and to learn on the land. And so it's just an incredible program. We have lots of different departments that go out and lead support from the science and the history. It's really quite exciting. So anyways, sorry I couldn't share more with you about that, but it's a brand new program and we're quite excited about it. And if I'm just going to keep sharing my screen, but minimize this because there's also really interesting effort around Egmont Key, and Dr. Hansen is actually going to share that with you because she's worked some on it. So I will do the slides for her. And Brooke, if you want to chime in, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Jill. Yes, we're very sorry Marty could not join us today, but if you'd like to hear some more of Marty's perspectives as a tribal member, I do recommend this amazing book, We Come for Goods, that's co-edited by our friend Paul Backhouse, who's been such a great partner for our Egmont Key project. And so Marty's chapter in there is titled Bending, Not Breaking. And you can always email me if you need some more information, but you can certainly Google the book and find it quite easily. And if you want to go to the next one, Jill, I can talk a little bit more about our Egmont Key project and the issues of sea level rise and heritage at risk. We frequently see news stories like this one, Egmont Key is vanishing into the sea. And in case you're not aware, Egmont Key is one of the outermost islands in Tampa Bay, and it holds incredible histories of many kinds, but it also has the little known and very dark history of the concentration camps where Seminole people were held in the mid 1800s. So that's always a shocker for a lot of people thinking about, yes, concentration camps in our own backyard. And we can't forget that. We can't let that history wash away with the island. So the Seminoles have always remembered their incarceration at Egmont Key, and it was rediscovered a bit around 2013 when the Seminoles were alerted to the fact that Egmont Key was washing away. And so they started returning there to reflect upon the incredible and tragic history of Egmont Key. The last of the incarcerated Seminoles were deported out of there in 1858. It was the very tail end of Indian removal. And one brave Seminole woman, Polly Parker, managed to escape out of the transport out of Egmont from up in St. Mark's. And she traveled with 4 or 5 other Seminoles all the way back down to South Florida and Big Cypress. And many people today can trace their descent to Polly Parker and those other brave Seminoles that escaped that transport west to Oklahoma. So there are a lot of amazing stories that have their roots and connections with Egmont Key. You want to go to the next one, Jill? And so we began a collaborative project with the Egmont Key Alliance and the University of South Florida Access 3D Lab and my own college, the Patel College of Global Sustainability, to help tell this story. And how we approach this is how we approach a lot of our work with Indigenous peoples, which is not to assume what they need or assume what they want, but to go and say, hey, what can we do? What can we help you with? You know, we've got some technology, we've got some student interns. What is it that you would like? And so we went and spoke to Paul Backhouse, and he said, you know, we really want people to know about this Egmont Key story. And we thought we can do that. And so we teamed up with Richard Sanchez, president of the Egmont Key Alliance, and got our student teams going to help to tell this story through virtualization technologies where we're scanning the island, we're taking 360 photos that we can deploy into a number of educational formats, including touchscreens and 3D goggles, so everyone can learn about everything that Egmont Key has to teach us, including the history of the Seminole people. And you can see on that map, the loss of land to Egmont. It's indeed shrinking, and climate change is one of the culprits. You want to go to the next one? And just a visual that gives you a bit of an apocalyptic view of Egmont Key. This is the power plant when the Fort Dade period was in its height. There are many buildings and structures out there. And if you're interested, Richard Sanchez can fill you all in about those. But this was one of the power plants for Fort Dade. It used to be in the center of the island. And now you can see it's washing into the sea. And scroll down to the next one. So we've made a number of trips to Egmont Key with Seminole people and also staff from the Tribal Historic Preservation Office. And in the center of this picture, you see Dave Scheidegger, who works for the TIPO, and a number of our students from USF and Seminole tribal members. And what we're looking at here is we're kind of reflecting on where those stockades were that held many dozens of Seminole people in these concentration camps. And we feel it was in this general area of the island. So it's always a deep reflective moment to think about that incarceration and the suffering of the Seminoles at this place called Egmont Key. You go to the next one, Jill. We recently did a 3-part series funded by the Florida Humanities Council to educate people about Egmont Key. And that's really our role as educators. And here's my colleague, Dr. Laura Harrison from the Access 3D Lab. And we also like to come down to Big Cypress and share this work and collaborate with Seminole people So we showed up at one of the art festivals a couple years ago, and Laura's explaining there to Bobby Henry some of our virtualization technologies and how they can help tell the Egmont Key story. And of course, the young people always love that, any kind of whiz-bang technology. And we're showing some of the scans that we did with our terrestrial laser scanners from the Access 3D lab. You can go to the next one. Collaboration takes many forms and often many trips down to Big Cypress, which we love to do. And so we did this 3-part series, and we will have this available for any of you to see. Richard Sanchez is getting a YouTube, right, Richard, for the Egmont Key Alliance, so we can put these recordings up there, and you can keep scrolling down. There's 3 in the series. That was the first one. And the second one, we talked a little bit more about heritage at risk, climate change and sustainability issues. And then it was the third one, you go to the next one, that I think people should really try to tune in on. And that's when we were joined by other members of the TIPO and the Seminole Tribe, including Aaron Tommy and Quentin Cypress, to hear about their perspectives of what this place means to them. And it's very powerful to reflect on all of that. If you can scroll down a little bit more. I want to alert you to another resource where you can learn more about Seminole perspectives. And that's the booklet that the Seminole Tribe put together. And it's available on the Seminole Tribe website. I give you the link there. We can put that in the chat too. And I just wanted to read you a passage out of this before we move on to our next speaker. This volume is a Seminole story, and its focus is on the island's role in Seminole history, its meaning to the Seminoles for today, no matter where they reside, and the risks Egmont Key faces from climate change. Over the decades, the Seminoles have demonstrated their strength and resiliency, but the island itself is fragile and delicate. Egmont Key, subject to the forces of nature, wind, waves, and current, are slowly, and sometimes not so slowly, eroding into the Gulf. It is now less than 40% of the size it was in 1877. Compounding these problems are the effects of climate change and rising sea levels. Is the island worth saving? Is it worth saving for its critical habitat? Is it worth saving for its history, or just remembering the story of what happened there? Is that enough? Is it worth saving to remind us all, tribal and non-tribal, how not to treat others who are different from ourselves? And if our answer is yes to any of these questions, how can it be saved? And this was written by Bradley Mueller of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. So please do avail yourself of these opportunities to learn more about Seminole perspectives in those recordings that will be up shortly on the Egmont Key Alliance's YouTube page and in the booklet. Thanks for showing that, Jill. So in Marty's absence, we wanted to do what we could to bring some Seminole perspectives and voices to this, and you can continue that journey here, or also by traveling to Big Cypress yourself and visiting the tribe, going to the museum. It's really a fantastic experience. Thanks, Jill.
Absolutely, thank you. You know, and I just wanted to leave everybody one action, because I know we're supposed to have actions to take. And, you know, often we think about, you know, greenhouse gas mitigation and things like that. But I also challenge you to think about land stewardship. You know, whenever I see just the building that's going on in Florida, the extreme expansion that keeps happening and all of the wild places that we're losing, I get really concerned. And whenever I ask, and I encourage everyone to keep asking, why do we need this new community? Why do we need this new road? The answer is always population projections. There's supposed population projections. All these people are supposedly coming. The answer is, so what? What about the people that are already here? What about the people that already were here? Where are we supposed to get fresh water and fresh food and fresh air from if more and more people supposedly are coming? I think we need to stop and realize that the whole economy is not going to crash if we don't keep following this capitalistic model, this, you know, colonial model. We need to take a hard look at each other, the people that are right here, right now, and make sure that we have the lives that we want and that we're being respectful of each other and the land that we're already on. And how do we make the life better for all of us? The answer is not growth. And so I challenge you all to challenge growth and challenge people to have mind growth instead of physical growth, and think about true land stewardship, because once it's developed, we can't get it back. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Jill, so much for that presentation. And thank you, Brooke, for your presentation as well, taking over for Marty. I just want to say that the piece about redefining resiliency, or resilience in general, struck a chord with me. And I think it's super critical that we don't narrow that definition of resilience to infrastructure and emissions, but also consider like how we truly build community resilience. Like you said, building relationships and sharing leadership to those communities that have been historically oppressed. And yeah, just so we don't simply survive under these impacts, but actually thrive and help all communities thrive. So with that being said, we're going to move over to Salome Garcia now. Salome Garcia is the Policy and Campaigns Manager for the CLEO Institute. Salome works in the Tallahassee office to connect experts with legislatures and staff in order to pass bipartisan climate and energy legislation. Salome got started as a program manager and helped to direct the field and digital operations for the Florida Climate Pledge, a statewide campaign to educate Florida's residents and policymakers on the everyday impacts of the climate crisis. Before Salo joined CLEO, she worked alongside the Food and Water Watch, Oceana, the Miami Climate Alliance, and leading environmental policy advocacy work focusing on oil and gas development and climate equity. She has a graduate certificate in climate change and health from the Yale School of Public Health, a bachelor's degree in international relations and environmental policy, and is currently doing a doctoral candidate at FSU's School of Law, focusing on international climate law. Salome's specific passion lies within climate justice policy and equity, bridging gaps to uplift frontline communities and while advocating for nonpartisan climate solutions. All right, Salo, take it away.
Thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you so much, Dr. Hansen and Dr. Horowitz, for all of the incredible information that you provided. And it's just a privilege to participate in this amazing event. So I'm going to share my screen. Does everybody see the slide? Okay, fantastic. Alrighty, so as Gabby mentioned, my name is Salome Garcia. I'm the policy manager with the CLEO Institute, and as you might remember from Yoka, who just introduced our organization a few minutes ago, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan educational organization that really focuses on climate and energy issues. So at the CLEO Institute, we really advocate for a form of environmentalism that is intersectional environmentalism. And this is a form of environmentalism that really prioritizes people and sees climate change not as an environmental issue, but as an issue multiplier that touches every part of our lives. And it is this interconnectedness that fuels our passion, our policy work, our educational work, because we know that climate issues are not in silo. Social issues and racial justice issues demand intersectional solutions, and our policy solutions demand to be intersectional because we are only as resilient as our most vulnerable neighbor. And so if you go on our website, you will find a little bit about our policy work. So I'm really going to be focusing on some of the policy solutions that the CLEO Institute works on directly and also collaborates with our partners. We work at the federal, the state, and the local level. And one of the most recent publications that we released is called the Florida Future Fund. And through the Florida Future Fund, which I will talk about more in a minute, you can really see how we can not only address intersectionality of our environmental, climate, and racial issues through our local work, but also we need to be thinking about innovative solutions where local, state, federal, and even international levels of government can work proactively together. So I just mentioned that the CLEO Institute works to really connect the dots between climate change, environmentalism, and racial and social justice issues, but we also work to bridge the partisan divide. We all know that hurricanes or extreme weather events don't care who you voted for. And so in my job, I work in a bipartisan way to advocate at the federal level for packages at the, again, federal, state, and local level that address that interrelatedness of crises like coronavirus, like economic crises, like the climate crisis, and justice inequities. So you might all have heard that in the Biden administration, President Biden just unveiled a $2 trillion plan in order to boost the economy. And we have been working at the CLEO Institute, excuse me, for over a year now to advocate for COVID relief plans that look at this intersectional way and look to healing long-term. And the way that we do that is by investing in not only infrastructure, Gabby, like you mentioned, and Dr. Horowitz, like you were mentioning, not only focusing on adaptation infrastructure, but also in a way that we are taking care of affordable housing, climate, and social justice issues within that infrastructure plan. So we're really excited to not only continue to advocate for the American Jobs Plan, but really hold the federal government and the Biden administration accountable to making sure that we are prioritizing these funds going to low and moderate income families and to communities that have been historically underrepresented and that have historically gotten a significant lower amount of funding to be able to implement all of these great projects that they want to at the local level. So this is a little bit more about the Florida Future Fund report that we just released. You can find this report on our website, and I will also put the link on the chat. So as Gabby first mentioned, and as Yoka mentioned when she was introducing the CLEO Institute, one of the unique things about the CLEO Institute is that we work with experts at the local, state, and federal level, and even some internationally renowned experts. And what our policy department does is it connects experts to legislators and provides them the most science-driven analysis that we have available in order to advocate for science-backed policy solutions. And that's exactly what the Florida Future Fund report does. After long, month-long, year-long, sometimes conversations with experts, we recognize that in order to be resilient in the state of Florida and around the country, we need to address the environmental and historic racism that has been exacerbated through the way that we historically have spent money. So in the Florida Future Fund, we talk about how we can creatively look for sources of funding to really be able to invest in our local communities and in projects that our local residents are asking for. Dr. Horowitz actually mentioned it, as well as Dr. Hansen, that in order to really advocate for local communities the best way as possible, we can't have a one-size-fits-all. We cannot enter a local community and say, well, this is what we're going to do in order to help you, because this is the best thing for your community. Rather, federal and state leaders need to work hand in hand with local community residents that are experts in their own neighborhoods on how we can invest in resiliency infrastructure, clean energy infrastructure, community outreach infrastructure, to really be able to highlight really as how resilient we actually have the potential to become. So I highly recommend that you guys take a look at this report. It's not very long. It's like 15 pages. So the work doesn't stop. Even though we've been in COVID, our policy team has been hard at work, going to the Florida Capitol every week and really advocating for some of the incredible pieces of legislation that that we've helped introduce, as well as stop some of the dangerous legislation that people have been trying to pass. So taking a little look at our state of Florida legislation, you might have heard a mention of the preemption bills. So of course we focus on clean energy because we want to lower greenhouse gas emissions in order to really be able to mitigate the climate crisis and be resilient long-term. And there has been a very strategic plan of preemption bills. For those of you who don't know what a preemption is, it's just when the state government says that local governments and regional governments are not able to regulate something because that regulation authority is being only given to the state. And this has some severe implications for local activism that we all, very much like. For example, the local 100% clean and renewable energy commitments that people have been passing for years throughout the state of Florida all would effectively be illegal. And those 100% clean and renewable energy commitments passed at the local level would no longer have effect. And it would really hamper some of the local work that's been happening. And that's just one of the effects of these different types of preemption bills. These are just some of the worst ones that we identified, but throughout the last year, we have done amazing work. CLEO Institute, alongside Florida FPIRG and many other organizations, really mobilized our membership to such an extent that we were able to stop some of these preemption bills. There was a preemption bill that was trying to stop the regulation of greenhouse gas emissions. That is no longer going to pass. A state preemption that local municipalities were not able to regulate their utility companies. We were able to amend that to make it very narrow and kind of hyper specific to gas stations. So this is a really huge success story to show that even though we saw a series of bills that could really endanger the local clean energy movement around the state, through grassroots mobilization of membership, petitions, people going to the Capitol, calling their elected officials, we have been able to stop some of these or slow them down. That being said, there are still some really scary preemption bills. One of the one that we are expecting to see pass through committee and going to the floor is the third one, SB 1128 and House Bill 919, which was the preemption on restriction of utility services. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that, but basically for our purposes, this would tie local municipalities' hands behind their back in having leverage with their utility company on their renewable energy portfolio. Like how much of the energy is clean energy. Local municipalities like to have that leverage in negotiating with their utility company, and this would stop their ability to do that. So we're going to put some links on the chat, but I really encourage you to get involved with your local organization because we still have some time to stop that preemption bill from passing through the Florida legislature this year. And other than stopping really bad bills, another part, my favorite part of the job is, supporting good bills. So the CLEO Institute, we introduced or helped amend 3 great pieces of legislation. The first is a resolution for climate resiliency. And this is actually a bill that we wrote that said you cannot build seawalls only and call us a resilient state. Resiliency is so much more than that. And resiliency needs a mitigation of climate change as well as affordable housing lens, and so much more. So take a look at the resolution. It's a really great bill. Unfortunately, it's not passing this year, but we are doing a lot of media attention, and that's really to amplify the need for innovative and equitable funding mechanisms for resiliency rather than just building seawalls. The second is a statewide flooding and sea level rise resilience bill. This was actually one of the governor's priorities. So Governor DeSantis announced billions of dollars for a program called Resilience Florida. And we would effectively be targeting sea level rise and flooding in coastal communities, which is great. We love the fact that the governor is trying to focus on sea level rise and really putting the money where his mouth is. So this is the Senate and House version of that bill. We were able to work with the sponsors in order to advocate for frontline community residents and communities that are disproportionately impacted by sea level rise to get a higher amount of that funding dedicated. And so we're really excited about that. And we want to continue to work with the governor's office and Senate and House leadership to make sure that there is even more of an equity lens and to make sure that we're really targeting that money as effectively as possible. And then finally, we have our Resilient Schools bill. And this bill would effectively help solar energy storage on top of schools. So it would over here on the right, you see like one of our fact sheets, and this is just like the benefits of being resilient in schools and improving that energy equity in schools across the state. So what are some of the ways that people can get involved, even either on the policy side, with CLEO or without CLEO? One of the things that I always say is that if it wasn't for the thousands of members that the CLEO Institute represents all over the state, I would just be a crazy person running around the Capitol saying, like, I support climate change. We are never going to have more money than oil and gas, but we do have more people power. It is in the rallies, it is in the membership events, it is in the letter to the editors, it's in all the petitions that you see on the websites. That is what arms us with the power to be able to confront utility lobbyists and oil and gas lobbyists and be able to advocate for the benefit of the public when I sit down with legislators. So you see one of our hosts, JP, there in one of the climate strikes in Miami. This climate strike was super successful. We had hundreds of youth from all over South Florida there. So Yoka already put how to get involved with the CLEO Institute, and you're going to hear from some other nonprofit partners as well. But really the power is in uniting as a community for the betterment of our society as a whole. So we have a lot of different ways to become active at the CLEO Institute. These are our 8 ways to get involved, but you can find all of those on our website. And I'll also drop my email address in the chat. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. And thank you so much again for the opportunity of coming by. I will give it back to you hosts.
Thank you so much, Salo. You're absolutely right. And one of the things that I find so relevant in both your conversation and your presentation and in Jill's presentation is that communities are at the center of all of this, right? We need to ensure that every Floridian, whether they identify with a city or a tribe, whether they identify as Democrat or Republican, has the right to determine what is in the best interest of their communities and their livelihoods. And a lot of the developments that we see happening at the state level right now don't mirror that. So it is truly important that we communicate our voices as loud as we can at the forefront of these issues to make sure that we align ourselves with our communities and democracy rather than those who wish to desecrate our air, water, health, livelihoods, and democracy for profit. We need to move away from systems of destruction and profit and more towards systems of restoration and healing for us all. And the only way we're going to get there is through the power of movements. It is when we come across race and class and identity to find what we all hold dear. And Gen CLEO's mission is to do exactly that. And I won't say much about Gen CLEO because we have a very special person to do that for us today. And with that, I want to give the floor over to Lissandra.
Okay, hi guys, can you hear me? Yes, okay. So hi everyone, good evening. My name is Lisi. I am a climate justice organizer based in Tampa, and I'm going to be talking about Gen CLEO. So what is Gen CLEO? Gen CLEO is a statewide program under the CLEO Institute that fosters empowerment and growth in our generation in order to use our voices and take climate action. They help students connect the dots and understand the urgency of climate impact so that you feel prepared and encouraged to advocate for climate action and policy. Through CLEO, there are numerous opportunities to expand your activism and presence within the climate movement. For example, whether it's increasing your climate literacy through attending educational webinars and conferences, or writing to your local elected officials, to hosting climate demonstrations and participating in media campaigns. There's always something that CLEO can provide resources to help make that happen. And here's a more detailed list of things someone can accomplish under our program. I personally got involved with CLEO last summer about hearing it in spaces I was previously in. And to be honest, the platform I've built for myself now couldn't have been made without that connection. Because of Gen CLEO, I went from merely sharing graphics on my Instagram story to taking real charge in my city. For example, leading the Tampa initiative to declare a climate emergency introducing US Representative Kathy Castor for one of CLEO's press conferences, being appointed at 17 as a board member for the City of Tampa Sustainability and Resiliency Advisory Board, and generally leading the effort into bringing more equity inclusion into the environmental movement we see today. So whether or not making graphics or speaking out at protests is your thing, CLEO literally has so many resources to help make that happen. And so here are some actions Gen CLEO is focusing on right now as we speak. The first thing I want to share is our Earth Day art contest, where you could express your feelings about the climate crisis through artistic expression in 4 categories, which are writing, film, art, and performance. This contest is open to ages 10 to 22, and first place in each category receives a $50 gift certificate. So for more information, if you have any questions or would like to submit your art, send an email to katrina@cleoinstitute.org before April 30th. The next thing I want to share is the Earth Day 2021 webinar series. This is a 3-day event that's going to be really fun and educational based off of 3 themes. The first day will be biodiversity, second day will be climate justice, and third day we'll finish out with civic engagement. So if you're interested in that, you could register at bit.ly/earth2021, and I will definitely share the links after I finish sharing. And then the last one I want to share is a petition to protect local clean renewable energy plans by opposing SB 1121 and HB 919. Salo already covered why these preemption bills are literally a danger to our energy commitments, so I'll just leave it at that. So if there's anything you will remember from me speaking tonight, I really hope it is this. If we're going to solve climate by 2030, we need to put all of our efforts into building solutions and fighting for justice with every resource we could get our hands on. And Gen CLEO is one of those resources that we need. So if you feel inclined to take some actions, there are 2 ways you can get involved with us. The first is attending our statewide meetings that occur every first Wednesday of the month. We actually just had our April meeting an hour ago, so our next meeting will be May 5th from 4 to 5, and you could sign up on CLEO's website, and I will share that in the chat when I'm done. And you can also join our WhatsApp group chat, where we consistently send messages with either actions happening in our area or just straight up building camaraderie. So that is a wrap on my presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me tonight. I really hope you decide to join Gen CLEO soon so I can see you guys more often. And I'll pass it to Gabby to introduce Florida FPIRG students. Thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you, Lisi. I'm always in awe when I see kids from Gen CLEO do anything. And I just want to add, I also would not be involved in advocacy whatsoever if it wasn't for CLEO and Gen CLEO. So incredible work. I hope everybody on this call joins the next meeting. So now we're going to hear from the Florida FPIRG students, Liam and Crystal. Take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm going to share my screen, but while I do that, I'm actually not a student. I'm a full-time staff member with Florida FPIRG students. My name is Crystal, and I am the campus organizer with Florida FPIRG students here at USF, and I also organize with our FSU students. And if you haven't heard of Florida FPIRG students before, we are a student-run, nonpartisan grassroots organization. We have a chapter here at USF, and we are based on a model that exists on over 100 campuses across the country and believes in the power of young people to change the world. It's very similar to Gen CLEO, but with college students specifically. Since the 80s, we've been on and off in Florida. Coming out of the 2018 elections, however, we were able to help over 10,000 students register to vote. And we had a number of foundations that wanted us to stay in the state after that and continue to do good work. Now we're at a point where we have 4 registered student organizations at UCF, UF, USF, and FSU. And we have a partially funded chapter at FPIRG College that's funded by a student referendum. We believe that students have the power to build a better future, but only if they can have the skills to be organized and have a strategic plan to get things done. So at each of our clubs and our chapters, we have a professional organizer, so that's me, that provides trainings for our students and helps them make strategic plans so that they can be successful. And Liam here is one of our student leaders working in our chapter this semester at USF, so he's going to tell you a little bit more about the work that we are doing.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. My name is Liam. I'm an international studies major, and I'm a senior at USF and a participant in FPIRG. So in 2019, Eckerd College in St. Petersburg became the first college to sign the Break Free from Plastics Pledge, the goal of which is to eliminate all unnecessary single plastic use on campus, thanks to the work of their FPIRG students. In the spring of 2020, we passed a similar resolution through our SGA calling for our campuses to do the same. And over the past fall, we helped register over 2,000 students to vote across the state and helped over 50,000 students make a plan to vote leading up to Election Day. Since then, we've worked to institutionalize voting across the state, and at USF, we were able to get voter registration implemented in freshman and transfer orientations. We work on a lot of things from hunger to homelessness to textbook affordability and more. But the main priority for this semester is tackling climate change. So our generation knows that we need to transition away from fossil fuels to repower communities with clean, safe, and renewable energy, such as wind and solar. And we know that college campuses are huge consumers of energy, so they should be the leaders in making this transition to renewables. It's bold, but we know it's possible. Within the last 2 years, over 35 campuses across the country, including the entire University of California system, has made this commitment, and many college campuses are already meeting, if not most, of their energy needs through renewables. This is why, in partnership with Environment Florida, our goal is to get the campus president and the major, Our goal is to get campus presidents at major universities across the state to commit to 100% renewable energy by 2040. This matches statewide legislation in House Bill 283 and Senate Bill 720, proposed by Representative Escamani and Senator Berman, that would commit Florida to 100% renewable energy, ban fracking, and create a workforce development board to create clean energy jobs. So far, FSU, UCF, UWF, and USF have all passed resolutions through their respective student government associations in support of this. We've collected over 2,000 petition signatures from students across the state just the past 2 months. So we're working to demonstrate that grassroots support across the state for this, and by collecting petitions from students and signatures of support from alumni, faculty, and coalition partners, that there are almost 1 million college students in the state of Florida alone. If we can simply organize people around this issue, we can make a big impact to change the narrative around renewable energy in Florida. And so what can you guys do to help? One of the themes tonight was everyone has 3 takeaways about how they can do something. Well, we need everyone's support: faculty, staff, students, alumni, community partners, literally everyone. You can add your name in support of our campaign. And thank you guys for having us here tonight.
Thank you so much. With that, we are going to open it up now. It's been a while that we've been speaking on this call, and loads of folks have presented so many ideas and concepts and things that I'm personally really excited about and would have lots of questions about. But it's up to you. Ask your questions. Gabby and I will moderate the panel and we'll make sure that they're answered. I see a first one right here coming from Sarah. And Sarah says, "These presentations were all so incredible. Thank you. I was wondering what concerns the tribe had expressed about resiliency and also what the plans for Egmont-Key are. Will it just erode into the sea?" So whoever feels poised to take that question.
Can I hear the first part, not the Egmont one, but the first part of the question again? I apologize.
Sure. I was wondering what concerns the tribe had expressed about resiliency and also what the plans for Egmont-Key are.
Sure. So for climate impacts, we're looking at sea level rise and also saltwater intrusion. Saltwater intrusion can affect the drinking water supply, especially at the Hollywood Reservation. I actually have some interesting graphics on that, but the saltwater intrusion line is moving inland over time when more people pull water from the wells. Basically in Broward County anyways, half of the water that every household uses is for landscaping. I don't know if that's true across the state, but in Broward, that's true. And so, you know, planting native plants, practicing water conservation techniques really, really matters, because as I tell my girls, like, take a shorter shower, save some water for the alligators, like literally, like you got to do that. So it's true. All of our water is connected. And when we use a lot of water, it's pulling too much on the wells that are close to the coastal aquifer, pulls that salt water right in from sea level rise into the groundwater and into the drinking water aquifer and ruins those wells, right? So saltwater intrusion is a really big issue. And as we move through like the Everglades, Big Cypress, wetlands kind of areas, that salt water is also moving in just from sea level rise because we have less water coming from Okeechobee and from the north. So that freshwater head is not keeping sea level rise out of the natural areas. And so plants can't transition quickly enough, right? There's nowhere uphill to go. So wetland impacts are also really important. And as I put in the chat, we're also really worried about extreme heat. The Seminole Tribe of Florida has a number of inland communities that aren't necessarily thinking about sea level rise as much, but they have been raising cattle for hundreds of years. They're the original American cowboys, actually. And so, you know, thinking about extreme heat, there are a number of reservations that already have 30, 50, 60 days above 95 degrees, plus humidity. You have to think about every year. And as that number is going to double by about 2040 or 2050. And by the end of the century, be like nearly half the year. So we really need to be thinking about solutions, whether it's raised solar that cattle can get some shade, or whether it's more like silvopasture where there's more trees planted, you know, and different kinds of agriculture. I don't know. We're going to have to get there together as far as solutions, but there's water issues, there's heat issues, and for all of that together, those are real health issues. So that's why it always ties back to the actual person and their health and the health of their family. And so I encourage you to kind of think about climate impacts through a health lens when you can.
And I can just give a brief overview of what's happening at Egmont Key. There has been beach renourishment by the Army Corps of Engineers to try to stabilize part of the island. So that's what's happening on an ecological platform. But on an educational platform, what we're trying to do is really help to get the Seminole story out, because it's a story of perseverance. It's a story of equity and inclusion and racism and genocide. And that story also includes the story of anthropogenic activities and sea level rise and more virulent storms washing away the history of the Seminoles at Egmont Key. And we are going to be doing a May workshop this year with the Florida Public Archaeology Network, and we're going to be implementing heritage monitoring scout stations at Egmont Key in collaboration with the Egmont Key Alliance, so we can continue to monitor the erosion of the cultural heritage sites at risk. And if you're interested in that, let me know. My students have already seen that flyer for the May workshop, and that's what's happening a little bit for the Egmont Key. And I'll turn it over to JP so we can have some more questions.
So JP had to hop off for another call, but I'm happy to take it from here for the next 5 minutes. Next question, I think, is going to be for Salome. This question, oops, I lost it. Where did it go? Yeah, okay, I found it. I'm sorry about that. This question is from Ho-Jun. I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And they say, I think it's great that CLEO is playing a big role not only in Florida, but also in the entire Federation. Based on the policies you mentioned, Florida seems to have individual policies for water, waste, food, and energy. When approaching the nexus concept that all elements are interrelated and should be viewed from a historical thinking perspective, individual policies can create blind spots. I wonder if there's a higher policy that encompasses policies related to sustainable development.
Hey, thank you so much for that question. So I'm not super familiar with the nexus concept, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. As I understand it, it's just like a way to have local, regional, and federal governments like coordinate with each other for long-term development, which is you're absolutely right. We do take that approach when advocating for policy solutions. At the higher level, as of right now, other than kind of the non-binding resolution of the Green New Deal, we haven't identified a robust federal policy that really seeks to kind of engage in this like interrelational way for long-term change. We're hoping that that changes, and we will be advocating at the federal level to make sure that we do have more coordination between federal, local, and state governments. So I'm sorry if that wasn't, a super great response, but I guess the answer to that is not that we know of. We will be continuing to advocate for that to happen.
And Sal, if I could jump in for a second, because my college does, we live and breathe the nexus every day. And it's really about how you can't look at food, water, energy in separation. You can't look at food issues and climate issues in separation. So the nexus is, why aren't these bills together? Why is, here's the energy bill, here's the food bill. So this is the Western colonialist thinking. Let's put it on a bunch of silos, and that's not how the world works. But it's complicated to get policies together like that. And so any way we can work on it is great. And I'm glad we're working on it, but we do have to start thinking about systems thinking and ecosystems.
Thank you both. So because we are short on time, I think I'm only going to ask one more question, maybe two, depending on how long the answers are. So we do have other questions in the chat. So if the panelists are not speaking and they want to take time to type them to the person, that would be really great. So I'm going to ask this next question, Charlie. He asks, what can be done to counter the rise of privatization of natural resources like water and clean air? And this is open to anybody who would like to answer it.
I can take a stab at it. Similar to the climate crisis, there's no one answer fits all, but I can comment on some of the active solutions that people are taking on these issues. There's two really big umbrellas as I look at them in order to counter the privatization of natural waters. And one of the biggest privatization issues that I know of, at least in the state of Florida, is the privatization of clean water and natural springs across Florida. You have a governmental approach where you're interacting with local, state, and federal government to hold corporations more accountable. And you also have corporate pressure approach. I would recommend that you take both. The company Nestle, which has several other parent companies that are also privatizing water in large scales across the country, but especially here in Florida, do respond to public pressure. And there are many organizations that do corporate pressure campaigns to make sure that Nestle knows that it is really harming local environments by taking massive controls of water systems. Right now, it was just approved that Nestle was going to privatize and take more of Jenny Springs, for example, in the Gainesville greater area. So there's so much that can be done. I think both corporations can just agree to have more sustainable supply chain policies, but ultimately we are going to have to work with our elected officials to hold corporations more accountable. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
Okay, if nobody else wants to add, I don't know, Brooke, do you think we should wrap up or fit in one more question?
Let's squeeze in one more. We have 30 seconds. Squeeze one more in there.
Okay, looking for one we can squeeze in. Sorry, by the way, I think my internet is a little fuzzy, so if I'm responding late, that is why. Okay, from Catherine, as Florida has a large snowbird population with residents coming not only from different states throughout the year, but also internationally, in what ways do you see this impacting things like community action and climate literacy efforts with residents?
I think maybe that's for you, Salo. Talk to us
Okay.
about Snowbird outreach and education. Who's getting in that solar powered golf cart and all of those communities and kind of passing out flyers about something?
Yeah, so actually we have seen that this depends by geographic area. And actually a lot of the snowbirds are very active in the climate movement. So because we know that snowbirds and people that come from Florida for certain times of the year are such a massive amount of our ecotourism financial gain, that is an extremely valuable population to engage. And the levels of climate literacy are pretty similar to the same climate literacy that we've seen in other populations. We do actually engage with snowbirds, especially in areas that are like, beaches that suffer from sea level rise, because we see that property damage and rising insurance costs is something that resonates with this audience. So it actually can help the climate movement and how much pressure we can put on our elected officials, because this is a valuable population that we care about and that wants to engage on these issues.
I would say the one area that snowbirds really aren't educated on, though, is like native plants. You can tell by the front lawn, like exactly where people are from, because that's how they plant. And it's very frustrating when the Home Depots and the Lowe's sell those plants that are invasive and wind up in the Everglades and everywhere else to people because they're willing to buy them. So one thing that I encourage everybody to do is to plant native, organic, pesticide-free front yards with lots of signage about what they are, and try to educate your neighbors, because they could be from all over and they may not have any idea that they're doing any harm to the local waterways or ecosystems. They really they don't know.
So Gabby, should we give Yoka the last word this evening? We haven't heard from Yoka in a while, and she's such an inspirational leader. I don't know if there you are, Yoka. So close us out for tonight.
Thank you. I mean, I think there are so many ways that we could all be engaged, and we're not looking for perfect activists. We're looking for imperfect, civically engaged residents that want to, forge change. And I think you've heard from many of us today in how many different ways we're working to try to make not only Florida, but our planet a more just and sustainable place to live. So I started by saying that I want to leave you with one thing and ask you to do, if you were going to do something about this, was to talk about it. So that is your homework for today. You can use your social media platforms. You can use a regular dinner at the table conversation. You can talk about it with your friends, your colleague, your significant other. But let's try to raise the urgency of this crisis. Like I said, there are some positive things happening, specifically at the federal level. The Biden administration has an all government approach to climate, which is, some of the concepts that we talked about interrelated, the nexus way of looking at things, system thinking, making sure that all government agencies and all departments are working together to solve this climate crisis. But solving the climate crisis will also bring lots of other co-benefits. It will bring safe, cleaner air, cleaner water, a more just world, one where we can bring economic prosperity by transitioning and decarbonizing our economy into a clean, renewable energy economy. So there are many ways to tackle all the crises that we are experiencing. Even in COVID-19, there's a relationship between clean energy, clean air, and increased higher death of COVID-related, actually in places where there's more pollution, there has been increasing levels of increasing death because of COVID. So there's even relationships there with the global pandemic as well. So there is a no-brainer, there's a win-win transitioning to a clean energy economy. And we can only do this if we all speak in one voice. If we can only do this if we demand the policymakers, the people that are making the choices for us, the people that we put in office to work for us, we the people, that's the only way that things are going to change. Remember, we the people, we have the power, but it's up to us for them to listen to us. So I leave you with that. You have homework to do. Please get involved, not only with the CLEO Institute, but with whomever or by yourself, just be a part of this. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Patel College for the invitation, to Brooke and to all the panelists here today. You have been super inspiring. And I appreciate everybody that took the time of their night tonight to spend it with us. Thank you again.